1600.
WWRL.
New York.
An Access One communications radio station.
Yetta Kurland's on the air. It's Yetta Kurland live. Yetta Kurland, listen in.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Yetta Kurland Live. I am your host, Yetta Kurland, and tonight we'll be talking with Sasha Ahuja of Planned Parenthood of New York City, Henry Chang of Doctors of the World, an actress, producer, and more, Aedin Moloney from the new play Airswimming at the Irish Repertory Theatre. I first want to thank our media partners, Go Magazine, Labor Press, the Soho Journal, Westview News, and the New Civil Rights Movement for helping make this show happen, as well as our community sponsor, The Ritz. You can pick up a copy of Westview News at 69 Charles Street. Check out Go Magazine at your local newsstand or at gomag.com. City and State New York is online at cityandstateny.com, the Soho Journal at sohojournal.com. The New Civil Rights Movement is at thenewcivilrightsmovement.com, and Labor Press is at laborpress.org. Also, you can listen to us live stream at WWRL1600.com, and please join us on Facebook at Yetta Kurland Live, on Twitter at Yetta Kurland, and check us out on the Huffington Post at huffingtonpost.com/Yetta. This week in the news, American women and men celebrated 40 years of the Roe v. Wade decision, which gave women legal control of their reproductive health rights. We'll be talking about this this evening and about this momentous anniversary. House Republicans filed arguments in support of the so-called Defense of Marriage Act this week, saying in effect that LGBT Americans do not deserve equal rights, don't need protection, precisely because we have organized to fight for those rights. Meanwhile, one of their members claimed that welfare moms are to blame for school shootings. Of course. In New York, good news, Cecilia Kochik was declared the winner in Albany in a state Senate race in an election by 19 votes after 3 months of legal battles. Tremendous victory. Her victory brings the total number of Democratic senators to 33 out of the 63 in New York State, though there is a breakaway group that continues to share power with the minority Republicans. And, of course, President Barack Obama was inaugurated for a second term. In his speech, he highlighted a number of social justice issues, including LGBT equality. He placed our rights in the context of American history, saying, quote, that all of us are created equal, is the star that guides us still, just as it guided our forebears through Seneca Falls and Selma and Stonewall. That's right, he used the word Stonewall in his inaugural speech. Many were deeply moved by this and the president's words on Monday, but I want to share with you a bit from an alternative inaugural address, one written by Sadie, an 11-year-old transgendered girl. Sadie was also impressed by the president's inclusion of lesbians and gays, but wondered why transgender Americans were left out. Here's a brief portion of Sadie's touching speech. Quote, "It would be a better world if everyone knew that transgender people have the same hopes and dreams as everyone else. We like to make friends and want to go to school. Transgender people want to get good jobs and go to doctors like they are exactly the same. It really isn't that hard to like transgender people because we are like everyone else." Smart words for an 11-year-old for sure. We'll be talking about the reproductive rights of all, healthcare in the wake of Sandy, the new play Airswimming with Sasha Ahuja, Henry Chang, actress and producer Aedin Moloney, and you, the callers, right here on Yetta Kurland Live. Please call in with questions or comments, 212-868-0975. Again, that number is 212-868-0975. We've asked our producer, Paul Newell, to sit with us in this first segment. We're going to be talking about reproductive rights. Paul, what do you think about the 40th anniversary of Roe v. Wade?
I think it's a fantastic celebration of what this country is about, justice and freedom for all of us, but I think we're not there yet.
Eloquent and thoughtful words. Did you do anything special today? Did you have a special breakfast, celebrate in any way?
I did not. I did try to help put together a radio show to talk about it.
That's good. No, but on a serious note, as a man, why do you think Roe v. Wade is important for all Americans, not just women, obviously?
As a person, I think
as
that
a
it's
human being, I apologize.
that all of us have the ability to control our own bodies and the right to make decisions that are right for our health.
Well said. All right, well, let's welcome Sasha Ahuja onto the show. She is the Director of Government Relations at Planned Parenthood of New York City. She has worked to organize at that on the intersections of gender, migration, and labor for almost a decade. We're delighted to have her on the show tonight on this important 40th anniversary. If you've got questions or comments for Sasha about Roe v. Wade, Planned Parenthood, reproductive rights today, please give us a call, 212-868-0975. Again, that number is 212-868-0975. Sasha, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live, and thanks for coming on the air with us.
Hi there, folks. Thank you for having me, and thank you for that very eloquent introduction, and really framing what this week means, both in sort of the wide range of news that we know is streaming on the various news sources, but also really what this week represents.
Yeah, and before we start talking specifically about Roe v. Wade, what were your impressions on the inaugural speech of President Barack Obama?
I mean, I think you said it best, sort of making the connections between Seneca Falls, Selma, and Stonewall really brings those of us who are working in those movements every single day to think about what have been the historic connections between our work, and more importantly, what is the continuing and future and visionary connections of all of the civil rights movements that we know we need in order to hold our movements together and really help us.
Yeah, and I know that your work is intersectional. Obviously, you think and consider in all of your work a myriad of those issues. What got you specifically interested and motivated to focus on reproductive rights?
I think as someone who as someone who's a woman and also myself having my own, difficult time as a young person navigating reproductive health like so many young people. Mm-hmm. I mean, reproductive health and reproductive rights and reproductive justice are, parts of my everyday life. And in the same way, I know that I have, along with so many other folks, visions for what this movement can look like, and really what the next generation of activists and organizers who are going to pave the way forward when it comes to truly intersectional work and work that's acknowledging racial dynamics and class dynamics and really bridging those important and necessary gaps that have historically existed.
Yeah.
I have a lot of, with so many other folks, a lot of vision for what that could look like. And so it's really an opportune time to be talking to all of you today, especially the 40th anniversary of Roe, and really thinking about what's happening nationally, what's happening in New York State, and what's happening right here in the fight for.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it on a local level as well as on a national level. And to start on the national, many refer to 2012 as the year of the women. Obviously, there was a lot of problems and issues. There was hearings in which Carolyn Moloney, Congresswoman, and others staged a walkout when there was a hearing on reproductive rights where there were no women actually testifying. So there were some difficulties, but we also saw some tremendous victories. The election of Elizabeth Warren, Tammy Baldwin, progressive, strong, independent women in real leadership positions in this country. What do you think 2013 has in store for us in terms of women and specifically reproductive rights?
So I think, as you said, really since 2010, as we saw folks, the opposition really do a lot of work on the state level throughout the country, and of course on the federal level to try to undo the huge successes of work and movements of the past, try to undo Roe v. Wade, try to undo so much work that had been done. Mm-hmm. We really saw the response, and voters said, no, thank you. This is not, politicians have no role in a woman's private medical decisions. That this issue is more complicated than pro-life and pro-choice. This is an issue of a woman making the best decision for herself when it comes to her health care and her
body,
life,
right?
And her body. And
right.
so we saw, of course, the resounding sound of voters of all genders and of all races really come out and fight back against a lot of these these
horrendous, like there was the proposed bill with the transvaginal procedures that had to happen before abortions. I mean, things that you couldn't imagine.
You couldn't imagine. I mean, if we talk to, it's really interesting. Also, of course, remembering, again, the work that was done before us and thinking that we were having these conversations in 2012, talking about rape and talking about
legitimate rape. How did that escape me for the first 10 minutes of this segment? Yes. What is that? That was a real conversation, Paul. That was a real conversation. It showed up in the debates in the presidential elections. Like how is that even that occurred?
Well, it's an important point in that one thing that is so important about organizing on this issue is that you hear so much from the right. They're talking about rape. They're talking about all these exceptions.
They're talking about legitimate rape.
This is an extraordinary case. This is not when really fighting violence against women is an important issue, but with regard to choice, we need to say that women have the right to make choices with their bodies at all times, irrespective of the circumstances. And this using of rape and violence is a way to marginalize this. Like, it could be okay then, as opposed to in other circumstances where women shouldn't be allowed to govern their own bodies.
Yeah, always impressed by the Republican framing of messages and the doublespeak. We are talking about choice here on the 40th anniversary of Roe v. Wade on Yetta Kurland Live with Sasha Ahuja from Planned Parenthood NYC, as well as Paul Newell, district leader. Call in with questions or comments. Sasha, let's go. We got our switchboard is lighting up. We got a bunch of callers. Let's try to take some of them if we can.
Sure.
We'll go to Susan calling in from Bethesda, Maryland. Susan, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live. You're on the air.
Hi, Yetta. So I have a question about Roe v. Wade, and I know this might be a terrible thing to say on Roe v. Wade's anniversary, but I don't know if Roe v. Wade should ever have happened.
Huh.
Part of me thinks that it was just such a private matter that it should have never gone to the Supreme Court. That should have gone to the state Supreme Court. In my mind, and I used to work for American Cancer Society, in my mind that it should have never been legislated, that it is as personal an issue as deciding whether you should have chemotherapy or a holistic treatment, that it is your decision what you do with your own body and those kind of regulations that, as a lawyer, Yetta, I was just wondering what your thoughts were as far as that invasion of privacy, that even making it a legal issue in the first place.
Yeah, it's
an invasion.
Well, I like it. I like the question in that it's provocative in the sense that it imagines a world in which everybody has access to whatever health care, and we wouldn't need legislation or litigation, in fact, to address that. But unfortunately, I mean, before Roe v. Wade, abortion was illegal. So I guess at some point, I think that you have to start somewhere. Sasha, what do you think about that? Is it something that should avoid the light or scrutiny of any of the channels of our legislative, judicial, or executive branches of government?
I mean, I think we sort of are all on the same page when it comes to the answer to that. In the sense of absolutely not. I mean, it's not. This is private. This is healthcare.
Right.
This is basic healthcare. And let's not forget that, soon after Roe v. Wade in 1973, very quickly there was a reaction on the federal level of the Hyde Amendment, which essentially outlawed all federal funding for abortion services, and was a direct attack on low-income women and women who every day rely on Medicaid for basic healthcare. Because again, let's think about the context in which we're operating, where healthcare, as we know now, things are going to be a little bit different, hopefully, but healthcare still remains and has had historically remained a luxury. And so,
what I think? I think perhaps what's I want to point something out, and I'm going to actually pick on Paul because I do know his age, even though I'm going to ask it in a rhetorical sense. I think, but I don't know Susan's age, who called in. Maybe what that question underscores is the profoundly strong assumption that abortion and reproductive rights just exist for women. Paul, do you think that in this day and age, folks just kind of assume that and they don't really make the connection that as Sasha was talking about, there are real efforts underway to absolutely undo and undermine reproductive rights, and maybe women of this generation don't necessarily make the connections they have been born into and grown up with reproductive rights, and it doesn't really connect and occur to them that actually might go away?
Right. I mean, not just age. I mean, I'm 3 years younger than Ro, but also class.
I've been able to avoid actually asking your age through that whole circuitous reference to it.
I am indeed 3 years younger than Ro.
Beyond rhetorical. It was never approached. But go ahead.
Also class and geography.
So you're 3 years younger than
I'm in New York City.
younger than Roe v. Wade.
Indeed. Indeed.
That's okay. So people can do the math, but again, I won't ask you actually.
But, I mean, first of all, in much of America, although Roe v. Wade obviously holds as the law of the land, there is not access to abortion facilities. There is not access to women's health care in much of America, especially for low-income women.
Yeah.
And even in New York, thank goodness we do have organizations like Planned Parenthood and so forth, but for low-income women, the access to these resources are much less. And so...
Yeah, you raise a good point. Actually, Sasha, maybe you could speak on this. Again, an assumption is that in New York City, women have the luxury of a progressive environment and don't face some of the difficulties and harassment that other communities face in terms of seeking out reproductive rights, access to abortion clinics, etc. But in fact, we hear all too often of problems, as Paul said, especially in poor communities of color, where people are harassed and there are folks who are either trying to divert them from abortions or basically, give them a hard time.
Right. I mean, this is so there's two issues, right? There's first the issue of basic clinic access. So when it comes to what we call crisis pregnancy centers that are sort of giving the false representation of having licensed medical professionals that are providing, supposedly providing women, comprehensive services, counseling, advice. So there's the issue of sort of false information that's really present. But I do want to pull away from the idea.
That's amazing, actually. Just that alone is a mouthful. Yeah.
And then there's, of course, the issue of, in front of many abortion providers across the city, clinic access, which remains a continued issue and is one that, many abortion providers across the city are really thinking about when it comes to security issues and making sure that our patients, from the Planned Parenthood perspective, that our patients and our staff have the safest experience entering health centers across the city, again, for basic health care. But then there's a whole host of issues when it comes to barriers to access. Before somebody can swipe a Metro card and get onto a bus or a subway to get to a healthcare provider, to get to a place like Planned Parenthood to get services. So, when we think about the wide net of the lives of our patients and of the women who access services, we need to think about what are their workplaces like, what are their home spaces like, when, can they take time off of work to come and get, basic healthcare services that they need. What are the whole host of issues? Is there childcare that's available, for them to make sure that their children are taken care of when they are accessing.
And you're supporting something, I think, regarding this, the Women's Equality Act, correct?
Absolutely. So right now we're at a really fantastic time in New York State where Governor Cuomo just 2 weeks ago in his State of the State address championed what he called the Women's Equality Act, which is a 10-point plan that addresses issues across the board, from passing the Reproductive Health Act, which is a piece of legislation that will finally codify New York State's abortion law. Right now in New York State, our abortion law still sits in the criminal code, and abortion is the only procedure that's not regulated by the health code. It's an antiquated law. We want to really move that forward, and we've been organizing around the Reproductive Health Act for a long time. We're really glad that it's part of the Women's Equality Act, and that it's one piece of a really comprehensive series of pieces of legislation that are going to address issues like housing for survivors of domestic violence. They're going to address issues like strengthening human trafficking laws, addressing issues like pay equity in New York State. So critical issues, a huge time for groups across the state to really mobilize, and that's something that we're working on and very excited about. Yeah, and indeed, to circle back to the idea of what we're envisioning for 2013, hopefully may 2013 be the year of the women on a state and a local level. I'm going to try to get to it. I've got a bunch of other callers. I'm going to try to just go through a few of them before we let you go, and then I want to give you a chance to give us information about how to get involved in Planned Parenthood and help out with the work that you're doing. Let's go to Michael in the Bronx. Michael, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live. You're on the air.
Good evening. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for calling in.
Oh, my pleasure. I am a progressive Democrat, but I'm also Catholic, and generally speaking, I am pro-life. However, there is a part of me that is glad that Roe v. Wade is in place, and here's the reason why. So much time has been wasted on trivializing abortion, but no one is taking time to think that, yes, it's a women's right to choose, and there are women who have chosen to go through pregnancy, but, however, these are the same women that have been victimized by, you have mentioned, domestic violence, been victimized by police brutality, victimized by drunk driving, and in the end, what happens? They're suffering miscarriages, which is identical to abortions. So these so-called pro-lifers who say we have to protect the unborn, it's so funny how they will harass a woman that wants to go through an abortion if she chooses to, but does not do a doggone thing to protect the women who decide to become mothers and they're getting robbed of motherhood. And in addition, I've also heard that the same victims of such injustices of the domestic violence, there's some right-wingers that would change the reports around and say, oh, these women went for an abortion just to in an attempt to cover up.
Yeah.
See, Roe v. Wade has been put in place for a reason, and it's a lot more to do than just abortions. I don't want any legislation making any health care decisions for my wife, for my mother, or for any woman for that matter. There's a fine line you just do not cross.
Well said. That's an excellent statement. Thank you so much. Words well received on the 40th anniversary of Roe v. Wade. Michael, thank you for calling in.
Thank you.
Let's jump to our next caller. We're going to go to Ilana in Brooklyn. Ilana, welcome to the Yetta Kurland Live. You're on the air.
Hi. I just wanted to thank folks in Planned Parenthood for just continuing to work on behalf of all women and men, because I think people forget how much society depends on the work of women, and women can only, contribute equally when they can control how many kids they have and when they have them,
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of the times, men forget that they're counting on us to take birth control and to, be able to manage their own reproductive sexuality. I think a lot of more men would be in the street protesting if they realized that if we couldn't have, birth control, they wouldn't be getting laid very much.
Women's liberation is men's liberation as well. Paul, would you agree with that?
Indeed, I do.
Absolutely.
Good. Well, thank you for your comment. Thanks for calling in. And actually, yes, thank you, Planned Parenthood. And Sasha, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. Can you tell us a little bit, and for our listeners, where can folks go to help out, to get involved, to learn more about Governor Cuomo's call for Women's Equality Act and what's going on on a local and statewide level?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you all, friend listeners, as well for taking the time to have this discussion with us. And we're really excited, again, for the next step, which is getting more folks involved. It's for folks who are at organizations who are interested in joining the coalition. That is the work that's happening right now. So if you're interested in getting involved, you can go to our website, www.plannedparenthood.org/NYC, and then on the left side, you'll see a link that says Get Involved, and then if you become a member of the Planned Parenthood of New York City Action Network, you'll be getting information, quite a bit of information from us when it comes to moving forward on the Women's Equality Act and all the very exciting things that are happening in 2013 and moving forward.
Great. So plannedparenthood.org/NYC. You can jump around. There's a lot of information on there, a lot of good stuff happening. I think what's important to know is, like you said, there's a lot of really exciting things happening for women, for reproductive rights in 2013 on a local level, on a state level. Still a lot more to do. Sasha, thank you so much for taking time on the 40th anniversary of Roe v. Wade to come on the air and talk to us. We hope to have you back on again at some point in the future.
Yes, thank you so much.
Great.
I really appreciate it. Take care.
Yep, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll be talking to more folks here on Yetta Kurland Live.
Spreading the word.
It's really about New Yorkers looking at us and saying, we want equality.
Equality Pride Radio, 10 p.m. to 12 midnight on AM 1600 WWRL.
1600.
And we are back here on Yetta Kurland Live, WWRL 1600, Equality Pride Radio. Before we get to our next guest in studio, I wanted to do a little update. This last weekend, I was lucky enough to go out to the Rockaways, to a wonderful organization called Small Water. You can check them out at smallwater.org as part of the National Day of Service. Me and a group of folks from the area went out to spend the day helping with relief efforts out there. It's just such a wake-up call that there's still so much more to do. We wanted to bring Henry Chang, who is the Executive Director of Doctors of the World USA, on tonight to just give us a little update and check in with us on relief efforts. So Henry has more than 26 years of knowledge and experience working on humanitarian and international development programs, not just in the United States, but in Africa, Asia, Pacific, Eastern Europe, Latin America, and the Caribbean. He's recently been using this expertise to treat people in New York City after Superstorm Sandy. We're delighted to have him on the show tonight. If you've got questions or comments, call in 212-868-0975. Again, that number is 212-868-0975. Henry, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live. Thanks for calling in.
Yetta, thanks for having me.
Sure. You're a doctor, correct?
No, I'm not. I'm a molecular biologist by training.
So I can make a joke and say you're not a doctor, but you play one on the radio. But, yeah. At any rate, tell us a little bit quickly about Doctors of the World, and mostly I want to just give a check-in on what's going on with Superstorm Sandy relief.
Sure. Doctors of the World was established in 1980 by its French name, Médecins du Monde. It's an international humanitarian organization with a network of 14 countries. Mm-hmm. And here in New York, we established our office here just less than a year ago. Mm-hmm. And our mission is to serve the most vulnerable populations that are affected by war, natural disasters, disease, famine, poverty, or exclusion, regardless of where they live. So we not only look after people with medical needs abroad, but also here in our backyard.
That is certainly a very admirable mission. How do you guys differ from Doctors Without Borders?
Well, we actually grew out of Doctors Without Borders. Mm-hmm. The organization was established, as I mentioned, in 1980. What really makes our work unique is the fact that not only we respond to short-term emergency needs, mm-hmm. but we also stay behind. And as you mentioned earlier, focusing on longer-term development projects for mm-hmm. as long as we're needed.
Well, that's a good segue into Superstorm Sandy. You know, obviously many of us dealt with the difficulties of the storm itself and some of the initial aftermath, but I feel like the longer-term, more serious stuff happened when we started to realize just how devastating the effects of this storm was on the city. And I think many of us who have gone back about our day-to-day lives forget that the large population of the city are still just tremendously burdened and not back to lives. They've lost much, if not everything, and are still in very difficult situations. Maybe you can give us a little update. What's going on, and what are some of the areas that are most affected?
Sure. We've been bringing a group of volunteer medical doctors, as well as working with local residents who, despite their hardship, join our effort in helping us to do door-to-door canvassing. We've been doing this since November. What we've been seeing is not only there is a surge of local residents who are unable to get connected to their primary healthcare service providers, but we're also seeing, as you may have witnessed, as you're out there this past weekend, lots of residents complaining of respiratory problems.
Yes, it's called the Sandy cough or something, right?
Issues that have been reported.
Right. There's a name for that respiratory stuff. I think it's called the Sandy cough or the Rockaways cough or something like that. Yes. And obviously there's mold. You know, every area is impacted differently, but obviously in this climate, I guess mold is especially concerning for people. Do you think that it's now, I guess we're nearing 3 months after the storm hit. Are we doing well? Have we learned from examples like Katrina or other places? Are we applying some of that knowledge here, or is an urban setting like New York City just totally different than the landscape of New Orleans?
Well, what we're seeing is, unfortunately, as we're heading into in the middle of winter months, we are seeing aid organizations leaving the region. This is
that because of the cold weather, I guess?
Of great concern to us, and even though that on the surface certain type of services are gradually getting back online, but in terms of medical needs, Superstorm Sandy really sort of casts a spotlight on those who, previously without access to basic healthcare services, are being brought to the surface. We're seeing more and more people stepping up, requesting just the basic medical support, including filling prescriptions. The doctors were displaced, had relocated to other parts of the city. We're also seeing lots of residents who simply do not have access to primary health care were able to receive free services from us. Nearly 3 months, as you mentioned, Yetta, after Hurricane Sandy, we are one of two nonprofit medical relief organizations that are there operating on the ground providing free services.
Okay, well, that's amazing. And I actually, before we let you go, I wonder if you could just give a website or a place for folks who want to help out. I don't know if they can make financial contributions or lend time, or if they themselves are healthcare professionals and want to get involved. Where can folks learn, go to learn more about what you're doing and get involved?
Sure. For those people that are interested in joining our effort in the Rockaways, we are actively recruiting volunteer canvassers, as well as medical professionals and financial contribution. And you can learn more about our program by going to our website at www.doctorsoftheworld.org, or you can send us an email at help@doctorsoftheworld.org.
Great. Well, Henry, thank you so much for coming on the air. Thanks for all the work that you're doing. It's a tremendous yeoman's job, and we thank you, and hope to have you back on the show down the road. You can give us an update on how things are out there.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, next in studio, we have the lovely and tremendous Aedin Moloney. She is an actress. She's a theater producer. She's a director. She's the founder of the New York-based Fallen Angel Theater Company, which is a non-profit which produces new and daring Irish and British plays for women writers. That's awesome. She is currently co-starring in Charlotte Jones's Airswimming at the Irish Repertory Theater, which is on West 22nd Street in Chelsea. I had the opportunity to see the play this weekend, and I can tell you it was tremendous, wonderful, funny, intelligent, brilliant, and moving, among other things. I'll think of other adjectives throughout the segment to add. Yeah, I'm delighted to bring Aedin on the air with us tonight on Yetta Kurland Live. If you've got questions or comments about air swimming, about acting, about women's repertory theater, about anything at all, please call in 212-868-0975. Again, that number is 212-868-0975. Aedin, thank you so much for coming on air to talk.
Thank you for having me here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let's just talk about the play itself, Airswimming. What's the background of the story? Truly shocking, but also a really compelling story.
Well, first of all, I'm from Ireland, and
I couldn't tell by your accent. I placed it more like Bronx or maybe
tough,
Brooklyn.
Right?
Yeah,
it's a tough one.
Yeah.
And the play is an English play. And it is set, it spans several years, from 1922 to approximately 1972. And it's based on two women, a Miss Kitson and a Miss Baker in England, who were locked up in an asylum for the mentally insane, or criminally insane,
yeah.
I should say. I beg your pardon. Criminally insane for having children out of wedlock. And this story is quite commonly known in Ireland with the Magdalene laundries, where families were ashamed of girls who had children out of wedlock, and so they locked them up. They put them away forever, but not so commonly known in Britain. And it's all come to light in the last sort of 10 years that this was going on all over.
Yeah.
You know, not just in Ireland, but families who were ashamed of girls, young girls, not only for having children, but also for maybe for being slightly different, or
right.
you know, not conforming to society or
right.
the rules of society
right.
at that time.
You know what's funny is that this is or I don't know, funny or ironic or interesting, I'm not sure of the word, but this is the 40th anniversary of Roe v. Wade. Were you aware of that today?
I just found out.
Yeah. But I mean, I think, when I saw the show, I told you my sense of it was kind of like a modern day Thelma and Louise set in a historical context, in another country. And so what do you think of that? We're celebrating the 40th anniversary of women's right to choose over their body and reproductive rights. And one of the things that compelled me is this lack of choice, this choice that had been taken away from these women, and this criminalizing of them just for being who they were, right? And it was so poignant because as I sat there in 2000, and what year is this? 2013, but who's counting? And reflecting on that, it's almost impossible for me to imagine, as I was saying to callers today, young women coming up today, I think it's impossible for them to imagine a world in which they couldn't choose reproductive freedom, abortion if they wanted. So I mean, I just thought that was such a compelling piece to it, and did you think about that, and what was kind of the thought process in choosing this play in particular?
I have to confess, I didn't think of that initially.
I'm not offended, but
no,
yes.
Please don't be offended. Initially, obviously that emerged throughout the, the discovery of the piece and rehearsals and just studying, what was going on at the time. I think what compelled me to this piece was that it's an exploration of what happens to the human psyche when you are incarcerated for 40 years in one room for doing nothing, from a young age, 16 to 21, and being locked up, and how that affects you psychologically and emotionally. And I think it's more than just a woman's issue. I think it's a human issue.
It is, but there was something really compelling about these two different roles, and the work that you do specifically in your organization. What's the name of your company?
Fallen Angel
Theatre Company. Specifically is for women writers and British and Irish in specific.
Yeah.
What led you to do that? What was the motivation for that?
Well, I founded the company in 2003, and at that time there was a gap in the market. For not just for women writers, but specifically for what I knew very well, which are British and Irish women writers, and close to my heart. And there still is to this day. The percentages are low of works that are produced by women. British and Irish women writers were my expertise, being from that side of the world myself.
And how lucky that you have this, the Irish Repertory Theatre right on.
Oh, terrific! Yeah. This is something different for us. We normally produce solely under Fallen Angel Theatre Company, but in September, and we've been putting this project together for a year at least, we were looking for a space to rent to, a theatre space that would be suitable to the piece, set in a mental institution. And I approached the Irish Rep. I've worked there many times as an actor.
It's a great space
for
it.
It's fantastic. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And we, and John Keating, who is the director of the play, has also worked there. And we both love that space, and we thought, it's in the basement.
Yeah.
It's like these women are suffocated and incarcerated and enclosed, and we wanted to create that atmosphere of for the audience as well, of being really underground. And so we approached them and asked them, could we rent their space, having had a long relationship with them as actors. And much to our surprise and our, we were absolutely delighted and thrilled when they asked us if they could present this piece in association with us. I mean, what an honour.
Yeah.
And
how long does it go? It goes through next week, I think?
It does. We close on February 3rd.
Okay. So folks can still go out and get tickets.
12
Where
more
do they
shows.
go? Where do they go to get a ticket?
At the box office at the Irish Repertory Theatre, and it's www.irishrep.org. Follow the links and they'll set you up with the box office, or you can call 212-727-2737.
It's, again, what a compelling story, and I think the thing, like I said, that spoke to me so much is, I guess it spans about 50 years. It's based on a real story.
Yes,
right?
On many, a collective.
Of these two women who were basically forced into an insane asylum for the criminally insane because they had a child out of wedlock.
Yes, or quite often, not necessarily, all the time, but quite often some of these girls, they might have been a little different from what was the norm back then.
Who isn't, right?
Exactly. And today, of course, we're all accepted for our quirks and our personalities.
No, no backlash for that today.
No,
but, and I don't want to give away anything of the show, but it's just such a compelling story, and imagine being incarcerated for simply being unusual.
And both of these girls, I should point out, Persephone and Dora are their names, but Persephone, she comes from upper class British, very stiff upper lip British, society girl. And I don't want to give away too much of the story, but she had an affair at a very young age with a married man. Now that was taboo, and she didn't even know what it was to be pregnant or how to give birth to a child. And she talks about that, and it's horrific. And she was locked away, and their families never came back for them. And in the 70s, when the asylums were closed down, they organised like council accommodation. What's it called over here? It's not subsidised housing for these ladies. But sure, how would
like a halfway house?
How in the name of God would they survive in the outside world?
So they actually get out in the end.
Yes, they do. They're thrown out.
right, but it's like to what end?
To what?
After having been there for 50 years.
Yeah, and still, they create this other world for themselves, and they create stories for themselves and alter egos just to get through the day. They play act. And then Dora, she's locked up for, she has children, more than one, children out of wedlock. But she was on the cusp of society at that time as well. She, she wanted to dress in men's clothes, and she wanted to smoke cigars. But
horrible. That sounds terrible.
Not really. But at the time, she never, instead of being allowed to, explore herself or her sexuality, she was locked up for it.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of hints and talk within the play that, she conceived these children by abuse, and it's just horrific. And they would never have been friends under normal circumstances.
And that story rarely would be told, women's history, so it's so important, the work that you're doing. Speaking of which, small theaters, repertory theaters, as these luxury condos go up everywhere and these small theaters are closed, how do you continue to do your work in New York City?
Oh, we beg. Like every other non-profit.
Thank God for spaces like the Irish Repertory Theatre.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, but to be honest with you, I work in the arts and have done since I was a very young girl. And recession? It's always been a recession for the arts.
Yeah,
it's always been a struggle. It's no different now. And funny enough, it's what keeps us going is the struggle. It creates the passion to want to create art, to make a difference. And I think, when times are bad, that's what people turn to, not just for escapism, but just... Yeah, maybe for escapism, but, to see something...
The human spirit response, just like the characters in your play.
Exactly.
We are listening to Aedin Moloney here on Yetta Kurland Live, WWRL 1600. Aedin, let's try to see if we can squeeze some callers in before the end of the segment. We're going to go to Rebecca from the Upper East Side. Rebecca, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live. You're on the air.
Hi. This sounds like such an amazing story. Do you have any, YouTube clips or anything that I could watch as a preview? I think that I'm going to go to the website and get a ticket and come see you guys. But have you guys practiced at all and maybe thrown a clip of that up on YouTube?
We haven't, but that's a good idea.
How did these girls prepare for the roles? It's not modern, so... I know they're actors, but how did they get ready for these roles?
Well, thank you for calling on a great question. I'm actually one of the actors in the piece. So, first of all, I have to perfect my British accent. So, that was part of my preparation. It's like, I did my research and, a little bit of historical background to these girls. And the character I play is obsessed with the British Army during the early 1900s, late 1800s. So I had to read up on the particular wars or battles or, what it was to be stiff upper lip. And it's very different from my background, I'm from Dublin in Ireland. So the other lady in the play is an amazing actress called Rachel Pickup. And Rachel is from London herself, and so it was a little easier for her to access the character or to access the accent, because it's where she's from. But she helped us greatly, and we have a fantastic director, John Keating, who did almost over a year's worth of research and work.
Wow.
Yeah, he's fantastic. This is his baby, actually. He's the one who brought this play to me initially in 2003, and he said to me, Aedin, there's a role in this I'd like you to play, and I think you could do a good job with, and I'd like you to produce it. And at that time, I read it, and of course, I was completely bowled over and completely in love with the piece and the writing. And I love working with John. But at that time, I was like, I don't know anybody who can play Persephone, the other character. And then last year, I met Rachel Pickup. I was working at the Irish Rep, funny enough, in the revival of Dancing at Lunasa by Brian Friel, which was a big hit here in New York. And we became instant friends, just great, and just amazing person to work with. And I knew immediately that this girl can play this role, Persephone. So that's how it snowballed, and here we are. Is it
difficult? Is it more a thing that you're looking for plays that fit this, Irish or British women-written plays? Is it sometimes a challenge to find those?
No, there's lots of them. It's a challenge to find the funding for the productions. No, there are lots of wonderful women writers out there. And we try to select plays with some sort of a social issue there as well. I have to be honest, not just beautifully written. Charlotte Jones is an award-winning playwright, world-renowned. And it's shocking that this play was written in 96 and had never been produced on a professional level.
Is that really true?
That's true. And there's been some student productions or attempts at it, but there has been no professional production.
How was it received when Charlotte Jones first wrote it? Did it just get filed away?
It was received amazingly in London and with fantastic reviews, but it was never picked up. It's very tricky material, but I love a challenge, Yetta, so So is it every night until February 3rd? No, it's Wednesday through Sunday. At Wednesdays, there's 2 shows, 3 p.m. and 8 p.m. Thursday is 7 p.m. Friday is 8. And Saturday is 3 and 8, and then Sunday is 3.
Last question for you, and I apologize we didn't get any more of our callers, but we'll get to you next week. Last question is, how has been the feedback in the kind of professional theater world? Do they get it? Do they not get it? Is it being well received?
It's really exciting, first of all, let me tell you. It's thrilling, because people are coming out of the theater in tears. They're so moved by it. We're getting standing ovations and packed houses every single performance. It's really touching a nerve in so many people. And mostly, within the regular audience theater goers here in New York City. It's having an interesting effect on certain people. Some people it has a little negative effect, but I find that a bit even more interesting or a challenge, and they're like, I don't like this, I don't like her, and I think it's because they feel completely challenged. I think it hits a nerve maybe within their own personal lives. I don't know, and. But it's been... Well,
I used Thelma and Louise as an example. Some people hated Thelma and Louise and used it as a pejorative kind of dig. So, Aedin, we're going to wrap up, but just thank you so much for the work you're doing. Thanks for keeping the art out there in our community. Check it out. Again, what's the website that people can go to learn more, to purchase a ticket?
To purchase a ticket, it's irishrep.org.
And what about Fallen Angels?
Fallen Angel is www.fallenangeltheatre.org to learn more about the work that we do and the production. And the phone number for tickets is 212-727-2737.
Great. Aedin Moloney here on Yetta Kurland Live. Thanks for coming on air with us.
Thanks, Yetta.
Tune in next week again on Yetta Kurland Live, WWRL 1600, Equality Pride Radio. Thanks for listening in.
The preceding program was independently produced. The views and opinions expressed were those of the program host and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of WWRL, its staff, or management.